Good afternoon and welcome to the event on Hill Etiquette for Interns, Best Practices for Writing and Networking. We're really excited to host this event with our friends over at the Capitol Hill Intern Association. My name is Taylor J. Swift. I'm the Director of Government Capacity at the POPVOX Foundation. For those who are not familiar with us, we work with the Hill to support pursuing innovation and making government work better for all, particularly with the focus on staff capacity and technology and building bridges across silos. We actually have a ton of resources for congressional interns to utilize, including best practice guides, previously recorded events, webinars, and our weekly newsletter that's free called the Capitol Hill Intern Update. You can find all of these resources and more at popvox.org/intern. So for this event, it's going to be an incredible opportunity for all of you watching today to learn and hear some valuable experience and help build your professional network to help lay that foundation for your professional career in politics or public service. The Hill, as we all know and our panelists know, can sometimes be a pretty challenging environment to navigate with its own unique set of norms, expectations, and honestly, unwritten rules. So today we've gathered a panel of experienced professionals who have worked on the Hill and mentored countless interns over the years, and they'll be sharing their wisdom and answering your questions on a ton of topics, from how to present yourself professionally to building those real, meaningful relationships with your colleagues and your supervisors, and of course, how to produce high-quality written work that meets the standard of Capitol Hill. So I'm going to go over a quick overview for the next hour. So we're going to do brief introductions on our expert panelists, and each of them will give backgrounds on areas of their expertise and their experiences as interns and now full-time staffers. And then I'm going to pass it to a group discussion for all of us, and then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A from the audience as well. I want to remind folks that this event is being recorded, so if you have questions, please submit them over the chat and feel free to submit them anonymously or to a specific speaker if you feel more comfortable. So let me start with myself. Like I said, my name is Taylor Swift. I am a former congressional intern. I worked for 2 Ohio members and then worked for the policy team on the House Democratic Caucus for then Chairman Hakeem Jeffries. My biggest professional claim when I was working on the Hill was help setting up the Modernization Committee, the House Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress in 2019, that really examined at a macro and micro level how Congress was actually kind of behind the times when it comes to workforce development and capacity and retention. And so helping to find ways to improve the staffer workforce and empower staffers to do their job better is a huge passion of mine. And so I'm really, really excited to offer, these panelists to hear their expertise to how to help interns to the best of their abilities. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first panelist. So Christine Ho is Representative Aguilar's Deputy Communications Director. She previously was with Rep. Salud Kargabal as the digital director and is always eager to meet new colleagues and friends and enjoys doing yoga and reading in her free time. So Christine, go ahead and introduce yourself and give some professional background.
Yeah, hi everyone. As Taylor said, I am Congressman Pete Aguilar's Deputy Comms Director. I've been on the Hill about 3 years now. I started in the fall of 2021. I started out as a press intern for Congresswoman Judy Chu, and then a digital fellow for then Majority Leader Hoyer, now Congressman Hoyer. And then after that, got my first full-time job with Congressman Carbajal. I was there for about 1.5 years. I went from being a press assistant to then digital director. And then about a year ago or 11 months ago, I started here with Congressman Pete Aguilar, at first as his press secretary and then as deputy comms director. So yeah, I did a good amount of internships. I was an intern for about 4 to 5 months. So I'm always happy to talk about my experience there, how I got my first full-time job, and now interacting with interns. I'm happy to advise on, how to network, how to talk to your supervisors, or how to just be a good intern overall.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Christine. I'm going to now introduce our second panelist. Jake Silverman is a legislative assistant for Representative Nikema Williams, handling judiciary, foreign affairs, and homeland security issues. He has spent nearly 4 years on the Hill, and before that worked in campaigns and taught debate in China. His work primarily focuses on voting rights, and he likes to spend most of his time playing softball and bar trivia. So Jake, take it away.
Yeah. So I think the kind of the thing we were talking about before that I want to emphasize or things to think about as you're spending your time on the Hill is that I really, really hate the phrase "it's all about who you know" because that's just wrong on so many levels. And the first part is, for example, if you know everyone, but everyone kind of thinks you're a moron, that doesn't really help you. So you really want to be thinking about like who have you impressed, and that's not to say that you need to like go try to be the smartest person in every room. That's not, in fact, the goal. What I mean by that is be a good person, be thoughtful, be considerate, be creative, be looking to help, be a person who asks good questions, right? Be a person that people want to help, that are inclined to stick their necks out for and recommend you for things, right? Be a person that people want to invest in. The second part of that is the second reason that uh, who you know is not the full answer is it also gives people the idea that they should meet people at the expense of getting to know them, of building deeper relationships, of building friendships, of building like things where you actually know someone beyond just like as a person who can help you. And that's not important, just important for like to be a person that people want to help, but also from the perspective of they'll can then help you once you get your job. So like I, spent a lot of effort doing that when I was an intern, and now there are a lot of people that even if I may not be super close with them, they may not be people I hang out with, but there's somebody that I have a good relationship with, and so I can just like pick up a call if I have a question, and able to be more effective at my job because of that. And then the last part of it is remembering that networking is great, but ultimately the most important thing is to do a good job in your office, to do good work so that the people in your office who know you well and can really speak to the quality of your work will put themselves out there for you, will send your resume around because it'll be ultimately be more persuasive when somebody who knows you and can really speak to your work recommends you for something than somebody you just met for coffee one time. So really think about how to be a good job and to do a good job and to be like a good person that people want to help is the best advice I have.
Yeah, Jake, I think that's absolutely so true. That's fantastic advice. Excited to dive more into that as we go through. Our final panelist is Gabby Gandorf. She is a Syrian American staffer originally from West Texas, graduating from Texas Tech University. She moved to DC roughly 2 years ago to start a career in foreign policy. She works for Congressman John James as a legislative aide. Alongside working on the Hill, she is a musician interested in bridging Arabic and Western sounds and storytelling in her songs. So, Gabby, take it away.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, everyone, for logging on to the panel. I would echo what the former panelists said. And then I'd also add, so I'm the most junior out of everybody here, and I did just recently switch jobs and get a new job. So I kind of like, I'm excited to hit on, how to like quote when people say like network your way into a job, or, when Jake was saying like when the common theme of like who you know and helping that you get a job with that and then continuing to do your job and expanding your network. I'm just excited to kind of let everyone know that it's not that deep and it's actually a lot easier than it seems to just make friends, get to know people, and then have them help you in the end. So I'm excited to talk more about that.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, great advice all around. So, I'm going to kind of give a little spiel on part of how to utilize best practices for some email and memo writing. And then we're going to kind of go into the Q&A that I have prepared, but I want to remind the attendees if they have questions for our panelists, especially around writing or networking or professionalism in general, please, please, please do include those in the chat. We'd love to answer as many questions as you have. We're here for you. So definitely utilize this time to ask any question. No question is out of bounds. So just let us know. The thing that I really wanted to spend a couple minutes focusing on is email etiquette and what that looks like. So a lot of interns, they're usually, it's either their first or second internship. Many people are either coming from higher education or another job. And sometimes the Hill etiquette can be somewhat different than other professional jobs. And so I think the main things to focus on when you're writing emails, whether it's to a supervisor or a colleague or even someone in an other office, is paying attention to how professional your email is. So don't be too excitable. Don't be overeager. Please, please, please do not use an excessive number of exclamation points. That is just, there's like a line for the amount of exclamation points you can use, but definitely make sure that you're not overeager. Make sure you're paying attention to the tone and who you are emailing. If you're emailing another intern, maybe it can be a little more casual depending on where you're at in your project or your workflow. But if you're emailing your supervisor or even your office's chief of staff, make sure that that tone is representative. So that is definitely something you want to pay attention to. Another thing is, of course, this has to be going without being said, but pay attention to your grammar. Make sure that you're triple checking your work, where your commas are, where your capitalizations, all of those kind of things are super, super important. Make sure prior to sending an email that everything is drafted before putting in the email recipients. I cannot tell you how many times I have had either colleagues or other interns, or even myself when I was an intern before, I would be writing an email, but I would have already put the to sender in the email, and then I would accidentally send that email. And this was before, some of the Outlook services allow you to retract emails now, but you would rather be safe than sorry. So definitely make sure you have the substance of your email ready to go before filling out who the email is going to. So triple check who it's going to, who you're BCCing, who you're CCing, and then of course, triple check if you're including attachments, whether the right attachments are included. Same goes for hyperlinks. Before sending anything out, make sure all of those hyperlinks are correct, because if there are mistakes, especially if it is grammar or if it is substance or if it is linking to things, like that reflects on your work product. So it's those little details that don't seem too major, but really, really can add up to how much trust people can give you when you're doing assignments or when you're reaching out to other folks, especially in other offices. So I really, really just wanted to emphasize those pieces on email writing. And then I wanted to briefly talk about memo writing as well. So a lot of the same principles apply, making sure that you're using good grammar, triple checking your work for spelling errors, all of that stuff, making sure you're focusing on how your memos or your press release drafts are structured. And oftentimes, even before you start projects like this, make sure when you're getting these projects from your intern coordinators or your colleagues that are managing this process, ask what they want. Ask a series of questions to be as crystal clear based on what their expectations are, so that you don't have to continue to go back and forth when you're drafting something. So if it's a memo, ask if there is a previous memo that's been written about this before, or if there is a template that you can use to follow a similar format, because oftentimes there are, because things obviously sometimes need to be updated, or if it's a bill recommendation, sometimes there are previous bills that have already been written on this, all that kind of stuff. Being clear and concise is also really, really key. You don't have to use super complex or sophisticated vocabulary. The goal is not to really impress people, but to inform folks as efficiently as you can. The reader needs to make sure that they can understand a complicated issue in a single read through. So, you may have a strong academic writing background, or you just really, really want to make sure that they know that you know this topic. But if it doesn't read well, then that's not really getting the job done as effectively as you could. And again, all of these things are representative of the work that you're putting together. So make sure that you're not overcomplicating this. You want to make sure that you're informing, but not summarizing. Sometimes, especially if you're a legislative assistant or a leg aide or someone in press, like a lot of your colleagues will already have basic understandings or basic information of these issue areas. They just need to make sure that the information included in these memos is accurate and informs them the right way. And so that is really important. And then, of course, making sure that your header pieces are all accurate as well. So the correct date, the correct name of the memo or the briefing, who is putting this together, what staffer it's going to, all of those things are going to be super, super important for your workflow. And once you start to get this down and understand the cadence and understand how the operations go, you're going to be able to improve that process. But these are the kind of questions and things that you're going to want to consider when you're putting these things together. So just wanted to really highlight those key pieces on writing. And now I'm going to move on to our first Q&A. So I'm going to start with Christine for this first question. Let me pull up this first question. So how can interns make a positive first impression when meeting with a congressional staffer, especially, reaching out over email to try to schedule a coffee and then following up? So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you try to start scheduling that coffee within like the first 2 weeks of starting there, I think, or actually that goes into my second thing to note, is to like know the house calendar, like it's public. We have it printed like 15,000 times around the office. I think it just shows like an extra mile when you can note like, let's say this week, right? We had a short week. Like, hey, I know that we're in recess on Friday. I was wondering if that would be a good time to grab coffee. And I say within the first 1 to 2 weeks of your internship, because that really gives staff a good idea of what you are interested in and what you because we want to make this internship work for you guys as well, right? So if we don't know what issue areas you're interested in or what part of the office or the whole operation that you're interested in, we don't want to keep giving you work that you are honestly like very uninterested by, that you are too afraid to tell us. So it's good to make that introduction early on, and I think it just sets you up for success for the next 8 to 10 weeks of your internship.
I completely agree. Jake, Gabby, do either of you have any thoughts?
I think I would just go in like, and not to push back on something you said, Taylor, of just like professionalism, but like there's a line between professionalism and frankly just seeming like kind of annoying. And like, but then I mean, be professional and be clear and be direct, but don't necessarily be overly formal, right? Like you don't need to be like you're not writing like you're not Emily Post here. It's but like if someone sends me a clear, direct email that makes them sound like a person, but also exactly like Christine said. They did a little bit of research. They're like, hey, here's when recess is. Here's why I want to talk to you specifically. Here's what I want to learn from this. And it's just short, it's quick, it's easy, it's direct, it's like personalized, but not overly personal, but it like still fundamentally human. That's the ideal for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Gabby?
I also agree with that. And I think just remembering that, okay, on Capitol Hill, we've all interned or had junior positions and been scared to talk to somebody above us. So it's not going to be like someone's going to look at your email and think like, oh my God, why did they send me? Like, no, everyone is like it's very normal. So one thing that I liked to do when I was either sending a cold email or even sending an email through another connection, I would always ask people to talk about themselves. So I'd always say like, hey, I'd love to hear your story. How did you get on the Hill? And it's like, who's going to say no to talking about themselves? So you usually got high success rate. So just kind of remembering like, it's cool. It's normal. No one's going to think it's weird. Just like, hey, my name is so-and-so. And, I saw that you work on financial services. I'm super interested in one day going into banking. And so I'd love to hear how you got your job. And I think, yeah, exactly what Jake said.
Great advice. Super great advice. I will add, sometimes, as you all know better than most, the congressional schedule, even when they're out of session, can be pretty hectic, and your schedules are already pretty full as is, just with your daily workflow. If you are reaching out to folks, definitely provide all that context, your interests and everything, but also in that outreach, provide times that work for you, because the more information you can send for your availability, the less it takes for that person that's receiving the email to go back and forth with you on finding a time. So being super flexible on, these dates work for me next week. If none of those work, the following week. So just providing as many times that work for you to give that flexibility is key. And then one other thing I wanted to add was, don't expect when you send one of these outreach emails to get a response immediately. You're probably not going to get a response within the first couple of hours or maybe even a couple of days. And that's okay. And like I mentioned, and everybody here is mentioning, people are busy, and that doesn't mean that they've read it or won't respond. That might be the case, but even so, just providing time for those emails to breathe for a response before you reach back out again is definitely something you want to think about too. So, yeah, Christine, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, there is something let me lower my hand. Something that has been so key to me in coffees, and I try to do this when I schedule coffees as well, is sending a calendar invite as soon as you get a confirmation. Because I am guilty of, I've missed like at least 2 or 3 coffees because I simply forgot that they were scheduled. So I really, really appreciate it when we like lock down a time, a place, and then the intern will send a calendar invite. It's on the calendar. I'm not going to forget. And I think that's such a nice touch, that shows that you are eager, you're prepared, and you're professional.
Absolutely. So this next question, we're going to kind of build off of building those relationships, reaching out to folks. Jake, I'm going to start with you for this one. How is it? What are some of the best practices to kind of reach out to either interns that are across the aisle, like politically, or maybe interns that are in your state, or even interns that are in the other chamber? So kind of finding ways to branch out of the traditional types of networks of things that you're interested in, but also, people that you want to learn from, but maybe folks from across the aisle, or even folks in the other chamber.
Sorry, did you say interns meeting other interns?
Yeah, or
Okay.
or staffers in general.
Okay. So I guess, well, I mean, I definitely, so I interned in the before times, back when like POPVOX 202 was a thing. And so there were plenty of events. So the first thing is just like go to events and talk to people. Like, don't be afraid to like put yourself out there. The thing that I would always, the number of times I've had the following conversation with interns is high. I look at them and I say something like, "Let me guess, you feel alone and scared, and you don't really have a lot of friends, and you're living on your own for the first time, and you feel like everyone else is doing better than you socially, and you really wish you had more friends, but you don't really know what to do about it." And they go, "How did you know?" And I said, "Because everyone feels that way. Because most people went to college somewhere else, they're from somewhere else, and they moved here after college, and it's their first time living away from like a structured environment. And what that means is that everyone feels that same way of wanting to have more friends around here." So then I say, "Well, when was the last time you met someone, thought they were cool, and said, 'Hey, let's go to trivia,' or like whatever thing you do?" And they go, I'm like, "Yeah, you're an adult now. You have to put yourself out there and be willing to say, 'Hey, like, do you want to be friends?' And then like put the effort into maintaining and building those relationships and friends, and you'll be happier and better off for it." So that's the first step on like interns meeting interns, is like going to things and doing things and saying yes, and like organizing things and inviting people to things, because like everyone else feels that same way that you did. The other part in terms of reaching out is being creative and thoughtful about what it is that you want. And just like Christine and Gabriella were saying, like we've all been there. We all like know the questions of like, "Hey, anyone else you can connect me to?" or all of that. But being like, "Okay, wait, what do I want? Like, and what am I interested in? Where am I from?" And if you're from a place, let's say you're a Democrat from Alabama and you have Terry Sewell and that's it, right? So think about like, oh, there's probably other folks from the deep South who are concerned, want to be an advocate for what we might call a homeless Democrat, right? As somebody who may not have a whole lot of resources available to them, as opposed to, let's say, a Democrat from California, right, where you have 45 options or however many. Uh, and so like, oh yeah, okay, I'm a Democrat from Alabama. Let me reach out to Benny Thompson in Mississippi. Let me reach out to the Georgia folks. Let me reach out to some Florida folks, and kind of, the Tennessee, Steve Cohen, right, in Tennessee, right? It's branching out within your network, branching out within where you went to college, branching out with your interest area. Or maybe you just really like this member's work on something. Like, I'm a voting rights person. That's my thing. So when I was an intern, when I was a staffer, I was like, I really want to like work on these things. Like, hey, let me go talk to like this member's person who does this thing, and like, hey, how do I? And just like Christine was saying, like, give them a chance to talk to myself. Like, how do I become it? So, and then using your resources like BGov, like your coworkers, right? Like the people who like your managers who may know people, or they may have an office BGov account where they can pull up an email for you. Or learning how to do research is just being creative about who you'd want to talk to and who might have an interesting perspective or information that might be valuable for you.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Christine, Gabby, anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to plug staff associations. I am a part of two here. One of them is both bipartisan and bicameral, and then the other one is bicameral. So it's a great place to meet people either across the aisle or in another chamber. And I am on the board for one of the staff associations, so I know that like it is like core to our mission to connect interns with other staff and also to connect interns with each other. And to echo something that Jake said earlier, I always tell my interns, you like meet them at this professional event, right? Or you get a coffee at Dunkin'. What I learned is like the real relationships are built off campus. So go hang out on the weekends, go hang out after work. I think it's a great place to get to know someone over coffee, but to really form that friendship and to start building your circle here in DC. You got to take it off campus. Like we've got plenty of restaurants and things to do on the weekends here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Christine, do you have any advice to your point about staff associations on where interns can kind of look to see what staff associations are available and how to join?
Yes, my good friend Bisher actually works for the Intern Resource Office, I believe. They're part of CAO. So if you go, I wish she could put in the chat or something. I think it's on HouseNet. You can look up the Intern Resource Office and they've got a whole list for you. And they also do intern fairs pretty frequently. So you can go out and it's like a college fair where you just go table to table, booth to booth. There are like hobby ones. We have a tennis staff association. We have a golf one. There are also professional ones. So I'm part of a digital comms one. There's a tax and trade one, I think. Or there are also some that are based on identity. So I'm also a part of one for APIs. I know there's one for LGBTQI staffers, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Yeah. Gabby, I'm gonna go to you for this next question. So we're gonna pivot away from networking and kind of talking to back to the writing tasks. So how should an intern in a personal office or a committee approach writing tasks such as drafting correspondence or policy memos for their supervisors or their colleagues?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess to start off with, if anyone is giving you a writing task, they trust you inherently a little bit, because I know that there are certain interests, like I'm not going to give writing tasks to everybody. So that's like already a plus, like already feel like, oh yeah, I got it. I didn't get a writing task for like the first 3 months that I worked on the Hill. I didn't get to write anything. So it's a great way to get something out of the Capitol Hill internship that you can show to other jobs. And so a lot of people want things differently. I feel like every office that I've been to has a different policy on how to write memos. So I would always just ask, whoever's in charge of me, like, hey, I'm super happy to do this. Can you give me an example of what exactly you want? Because they all have different definitions of memos. And then furthermore, I would always ask them like, hey, like, I just want to make sure I do this correctly for you. So can I give you a first draft? It's kind of like prefacing, saying like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing. Can you please like check over this for me? Then we work through like a second draft together until you start getting the hang of things. Especially like, okay, for example, I'm super interested in foreign policy. I always wanted to write memos on foreign policy. When I finally got the chance to do it, I didn't know how. I was like, okay, I like wrote like a college essay and I wrote like 3 pages. And I remember so specifically, like my LA looked at me and she was like, what is this? She was like, we're not this. That's not a memo. And then she like marked up everything, and then I just started over. And so it was like fine because I realized I had no idea what I was doing, and then I knew that whatever it is, just always ask for an example, and then ask to do it with your colleague, and it'll be fine. But it's a really good way to like off the Hill, from what I understand, one of the only things that people actually tangibly take when you're not in a government job are writing samples like this. So definitely something to get good at.
I was actually gonna echo exactly what you just said about writing samples. Like, make sure that as you're putting these together, thinking that like this is something that I could use in a future job interview or a deliverable for applying for a job either on and off the Hill. But you have to make sure as well, like getting permission from your office to use those kind of writing samples for future job applications. You don't want to make sure you're not oversharing information that they asked you to put together. So, you know, be delicate with that kind of situation, but definitely try to use those as those takeaway pieces to help leverage you for future internships or just full-time jobs. So, Christine, Jake, do you have anything to add on, you know, how best to approach those writing tasks?
I think it's important to ask for like a previous example and try to stay as close to it as you can. I've definitely gotten stuff in the past where I gave them a sample and it looks really different. And I'm kind of like, why did you like why did you create a whole new format? But also I have on the flip side also gotten things where it was like almost exactly copied and pasted back to me. So I think just like try to follow the format and then feel free to get a little creative with like the actual content, right? If we already have something, we're probably not going to ask you to repeat the same thing. So address the new topic or whatever is at hand. But yeah, I think formatting is it does not get talked about enough, but stay with the format.
Yeah, and like I think that's exactly right. But and like make sure it's clean, make sure it's pretty, make sure it like it's just you were saying earlier, like watch your grammar. But also feel free to ask questions about what it is they want. Like make sure you're understanding what the purpose of this task is. Like, is this just like a briefing memo for the staffer because they want to learn about something? Is this a briefing memo for the member? Is this like something that's supposed to be public facing? Is this like I've had interns who just as Gabriella was saying, were very impressive, and not all of them. Like take first drafts at resolutions for me, like bill text. And for example, I had one intern; she was brilliant, but she basically wrote me like something you would read in a theater, like a Shakespeare monologue kind of thing. Like it wasn't Shakespearean, but it was like she was a theater person, and she wrote me something theatery, and I was like, this is brilliantly written. I want to be clear with you, but this is not a piece of legislation. And we had like a conversation and we worked it through like, no, like here's an example. Here's how you want to like take the things you have, which are great ideas, but make sure you're like answering the question. You're like accomplishing the task. And so be thoughtful about like asking questions of what exactly it is that the person who's giving the task is in fact looking for.
Wow, that is a crazy story. I feel like I've heard so many interesting ones, but I've never heard.
Oh no, to be clear, it was still in like legislative format. It
Wow.
was just like written like a theater speech, and it was great. I want to be clear, but like just not a piece of legislation that I'd introduce.
That's so interesting. That's such a cool story. Oh, wow. Okay, so the next question I have here is going to go to Christine. So, how can interns handle difficult or sensitive situations, such as dealing with demanding supervisors or even just navigating the politics of an office while, of course, maintaining professionalism and integrity?
Yeah, I mean, in these cases, your intern coordinator, which is oftentimes staff assistant, they should be your best advocate. So, if an LA or someone is giving you too much work or being really demanding or not giving you enough information, I would go to them first to, be like, hey, is it okay if we go on a walk or go grab coffee sometime? And gently deliver like, hey, I'm having some challenges or I'm struggling a little bit here. Let them know, and they should be the person to then relay that to the rest of the team. In the case that the intern coordinator is the person who is making things a little challenging, I would just go one step up your org chart. So maybe that's if you're in comms, going to your press sec or comms director, and if on the ledge side, maybe go to an LA, or if I think if it's quite dire, maybe the LD. I would save the chief for like pretty late in the process. Like things would have to be really, really tenuous to go that far, would be my advice there. And then I keep plugging the CAO. We love them. They also have services for interns as well, where you can go in, it's confidential, and they have career coaches that you can just, though, like you can be a little less like beat around the bushy with them. You just be like, this is happening, I don't know how to deal with it. And they are trained professionals who will navigate you towards the right path.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, and I completely agree. Jake, Gabby, do you have anything else to add on that one? Okay, that sounds good. We're getting a couple questions in the Q&A from the audience, so we're gonna pivot to some of those. So, oh, great. They're both about networking. So the first one we're gonna ask here is, what about approaching someone at a networking event? How do you start those conversations? Jake, I know you gave a pretty great answer on this earlier, but I will ask Gabby first, and then we can go to Christine.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I was literally 2 days ago at an event with my interns. And I literally said to them, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be on this panel because I'm standing here and I don't know like how I'm going to talk to anybody here. And it was just a room full of people that I didn't know. And they were super important and they had no reason to want to talk to me. So I was like, okay, no, let me like try to figure this out. So I was with my office. So I first asked my, so okay, first step is like figure out, do I know anybody here, or like am I going with somebody who might know somebody? So I was with my office, so I asked my chief to connect me with someone. I literally went up to my chief. I was like, I just want to talk to people. I don't know anybody here. So that was the first thing. But let's say you're going to one of these receptions on like the social blast or something by yourself, and it's just, you know, that there's some sort of cause going on. Like maybe it's like, I think I went to one for like forestry and I was trying to meet people. It is something random and you don't necessarily, like maybe you don't work on the issues. So you can't be like, oh yeah, you know, like I work on forestry and I want to, you know, do this. So you just trying to meet people. I always start with a compliment because I think that that's like a very low key and not super serious way to just start talking to people naturally and not make it seem like I want a job from you or something. So I'll just see somebody, I'll be like, oh, love your jacket. And they usually also want to talk to people. So they usually are also looking for somebody to give them an excuse to talk. So like one time I think I told somebody like, oh my gosh, I love your pink jacket. It's summer and I can't find any summer clothes. And then they said something like, oh, the loft is having a sale. And then I was like, oh, no way. Well, I said, whatever. So we start talking. And then of course, like it just comes up like, oh, who do you work for? And it starts like that. And then they'll also sometimes like not know anybody. And then you kind of start taking it on as a group. So I think just like keeping in mind, like, again, at the end of the day, even if there's maybe like, even if you're an intern and they're all LAs or something, like they're all just people and everybody's like fine with meeting interns and helping interns and talking to everybody else. So just like being normal, being chill, throwing a compliment, any way that you would normally talk to. I guess there isn't another situation in which you would probably just be talking to strangers in a room besides trying to network. But I would say that's for me the most natural way that I've been able to go about it.
That is fantastic advice, Gabby. And I'm not going to lie, I'm still looking for better summer clothes because it is so hot all the time. So that is a great conversation starter for sure. Christine, anything to add?
No, I love that. I also love leading with a compliment. I think there's been a handful of times where I've just been like, hey, I'm Christine. Nice to meet you. And I haven't been shut down in the past. So it does work. It just feels so incredibly unnatural. And then the other thing I do is I will just seek out, like scan the room for the other person who is also like awkwardly standing there by themselves. And I'm like, okay, we are going to be friends for this event. And they usually are looking for someone to talk to.
That's awesome. I agree. Jake, I feel like you gave a great example to this question a little earlier about just being approachable, asking fun questions, and you know, being kind of relaxed on it too, because we're all just human beings. So Jake, we'll go to you on the next question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one sentence is like, no, this is like part of your job now. like you need to be willing to approach people and be social and to talk to people and solicit it. Like that is part of, like, this is a job you're interested in. Like that's just part of the job, and you need to be in it. Like you have to grow up about it. Like it's hard and it sucks sometimes, but like you just kind of have to do it because that's part of the job.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess, Jake, I'm going to go back to you for this second audience question we have here. It's similar but different. So how would you recommend going about networking and learning about the roles you are interested in when you're working in a district office?
So that's a great question. A really good friend of mine what came from a DO, moved to DC, but she had done Hill internships before that. So she knew the thing better. So I'm trying to think about how I'd recommend. I mean, the first thing is just like ideally your office allows you to build a relationship with your district, with your DC counterparts, right? Whether that's staff retreats or whether that's just like working in um the just the natural flow of your work, right? So you know what I want to, you should be sharing information between, hey, the legislative staff should make sure that the district staff knows what's going, well, the outreach staff especially should know what's going on so that they can highlight that to constituents they meet, and the outreach staff should be reporting back problems that they hear to the legislative staff. So those lines of communication like should be open, and if there's not, there's a different problem. um, the other thing would be, especially if you're an intern, is asking your uh your staffer, sorry, your intern coordinator in the district office to set up, perhaps, maybe for the sake of the time of the DC staffer, like a joint coffee with everyone, or like a Zoom call where they say, hey, it's like, here's the questions you can learn what an LA does. Something that I did when I was an intern coordinator is I did those with everyone in the office. I mandated the staffers have coffee with the interns. We did them groups, but it was district too. It was district interns and it was district staff. So everyone on the team got an opportunity to be like, what does a chief of staff do? What does an LD do? What does a casework manager do? What does an outreach director do? And so just asking for the things that you want is, hey, I'm actually interested in being in DC long term, after college or whatever it is, and I'm really interested in mineral reclamation policy. Can I talk to our like public lands person? And then hopefully your intern coordinator says, yeah, you could just email them, like just say, hi, I'm interested in this, can we chat? uh or maybe they set it up, but like the thing I would say is just like ask for what you want.
Yeah, that's great advice. Gabby, Christine, anything to add?
Yeah, I was a COVID intern, so every coffee I took throughout both of my internships were virtual. And I also did a lot of cold coffees cold Zooms, I guess, back then as well. And I think like now I've still gotten emails from people who are like, hey, I'm like actually not in DC. Do you mind if we like hop on a call or hop on a Zoom? It's just like, it's not weird at all anymore. It's just like the same. It's just like a cold email for a coffee. It's just, you're not here. So if you're in the DO, I would still look through BGov that Jake mentioned, in issue areas that you are interested in. Or you take one coffee with, let's say you're interested in foreign affairs, you get a coffee with your office's foreign affairs person in DC, and you ask them like, hey, is there anyone that you think I should be connected to? I'd really appreciate it. Look through committee staff and just do the same thing. Just same cold email. It's just instead of meeting at whatever coffee shop, you're meeting on a Zoom. And a lot of times we appreciate that because then I don't have to leave my desk.
Yeah, that's great advice. So we have one more question here, and then wanted to just give a reminder to those in the audience to ping us on any of the questions you have remaining, because we are coming up on time. So I'm going to ask this question. Gabby, we can start with you on this next one. So how can interns balance their demands of their internship with their other responsibilities? Maybe it's academic work or personal commitments like jobs. I know I've been in both situations and it can be tough. So would love to hear your thoughts on how to still make a positive impact when you still have a lot going on outside of the internship.
Absolutely. I've also, yeah, been in that place doing school and trying to network and trying to, work on side hustles and trying to do actual work. And so I think the number one thing is probably quality over quantity. I mean, if an intern comes up to you every day and says, "Hey, how can I help you? I'm really willing to do anything you need." Um, that small sentence of them taking the initiative to come ask somebody else actually goes a long way. Most of the time, there's not. I feel like I run out of things for the interns to do all the time. So most of the time, there's actually not a lot that we can give them, but it's the fact that they're coming up and asking. I've had different types of interns, and I remember writing like recommendation letters for both. And the ones that always came up to me, I always had more of a memory of, even though they didn't technically like spend more time or more labor for me, they were just more willing. So I would definitely say the quality of, I know it seems so obvious, but just how you talk to your staff and like how you treat your staff and just showing them that you're willing to do it. I don't think really people are going to make you stay like late 7, 8 o'clock, but I think it just goes a long way to show that you would if they need you to.
Jake, Christine?
It was funny. I used to kick my interns out with that exact line. I'm like, great, congratulations. You've proved to me that like you're willing to do it and you're dedicated. You made your point. Go have a life. But I think the thing I would say is like that's like figuring out how to balance all those things is like a very important life skill. So I can, part of it is just figuring out what works best for you. So the thing I said first is making sure that you do a good job in your office. So your primary work related things, like if you have other internship demands with other responsibilities, such as academic work and personal commitments, like some of that is like a personal choice of what you want and what you value. And like, are you willing to throw yourself entirely into this internship, do all the things, everything, and then get that job and then figuring it out later? Like, that's a choice. Do you have a partner that you need to like devote time to, right? Is that something that you care about? Do you have friends here that you need to maintain a relationship? Do you have family commitments? Do you have a sick parent? Like, there's a lot of different personal considerations that you kind of need to value. And part of being a professional and an adult is being able to value those things and make those decisions for yourself. So I can give you like solutions and we can give you advice on like ways to be more efficient at the tasks that you do. But in terms of how to balance those demands, we can't help that. I don't think that we can really help you with that other than reminding you that figuring out how to balance the competing demands and your limited time is a like part of being an adult.
That's well said. Christine, anything to add?
Yeah, I think keeping your channels of communication open, like I totally get on a recess day or like if especially for this term of interns, once we head into August, it's going to slow down quite a bit. I totally understand like you have homework to do or you're still in class, like you've got other tasks that you want to get done. And I really think that most offices are understanding if you're like, hey, I've got finals this week. Do you mind if I leave a little early to go study? Or like, is it okay if I take Friday off? Hopefully, most offices should understand that and be accommodating. What would be a big not to do is to like start doing homework at your desk without telling anyone. Because we see it and we like notice it. And like what Gabby said, like you could be proactive and ask, like, are there any tasks that you need that I can help with? And if everyone seems to be like, there aren't any tasks, I think you could go to your staff and be like, hey, I really want to help out. Are there any like busy work or like other things I can do? If not, do you mind if I take some time to like finish this paper or something? So just keeping that communication open. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, all three of you gave phenomenal advice. I think the one thing I would add is, and I think Jake and Gabby, you might have alluded to this a little bit, but understanding yourself is really important. So burnout is a real thing. Both physical and mental burnout is very real on the Hill. You're dealing with a lot of consequential situations. Especially if you're taking constituent calls or doing a lot of correspondence, it can be a lot of work. And especially if you're juggling those personal responsibilities, whether it is like another job or it is academic work, just knowing your limits and making sure that if and when you have free time away from all of these things to take care of yourself, because this can be a marathon, not a sprint, especially if you're an intern that wants to work in public service. The internship may lead to a full-time job, but that full-time job will be exhausting and it will be daunting. And it's something that you're going to have to really take into consideration. So being real with yourself and understanding yourself and setting those boundaries so that you can do this for the long haul, if this is stuff that you really, really care about, that is a huge best practice that I want to make sure folks know too, because we all go through ups and downs, and even your colleagues and your coworkers and your supervisors, like we all don't know what everybody's going through. Somebody's always going through something. So just being aware of that, but also understanding yourself too, for your expectations. So I see we have an additional question from the audience here. So this says, question for the whole panel. How would you go about reminding a staffer in a friendly manner about getting a coffee that they may have forgotten about? So I can open this up to anyone. Christine, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I think Taylor, you said this earlier, like if you don't hear back within a few hours or a few days, like do not fret. Actually clarifying, I don't know if this is like you haven't gotten a response or you're literally sitting there and the person is not there. But I think for the former, if you've just wait, I would give it like 3 days or just wait until the next fly out or recess day. And I would just do a really casual, like, hey, just following up on this. Totally get that your inbox must be so crazy right now. Are you free on next recess day for a coffee? I would love to pick your brain about X, Y, and Z. If you are there at the coffee, they don't show up, I would go back to your desk. It was like, wait 10 to 15 minutes, go back to your desk. Hey, if today's not a great time, totally okay. Can we reschedule to next recess day? Da 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 da.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think what I'll add too, especially if this is the first time meeting someone, sometimes they don't know what you look like, right? If you're sending a cold email and you're just, it's no picture, nothing like that. Sometimes 10, 20 minutes beforehand, I'll send a reminder email in that thread or in that calendar invitation of like, hey, I'm heading to, ADP, or I'm heading to Longworth Duncan and I'm wearing whatever. Like today it's white shirt with a gray suit, just so that it's not only that little reminder that, oh my gosh, I have this in 10, 15 minutes, but also who to look for, to make it a little easier so that you're not both wandering around wherever you're meeting, trying to figure out who's who. So that's what I would add. Gabby or Jake, anything you want to add on that one?
I'd say the same thing. I have been ghosted so many times during these coffees that I actually started as a practice. Every day I'd like just see, do I have any coffees? And then I would email all of them like, hey, just double checking. Does 10 a.m. still work? And 3 times out of 4 they reschedule. So it's like a really good, at least for me, I don't know for anybody else, but so I think it's a good reminder. I do the same thing that Christine says. It's like when I like left at the table, I'm like, hey, I'm at Dunkin', and then they may have like read it 15 minutes later and just said like, I'm so sorry. And it's like, no problem. Does this work for you? Never take anything personally is what I learned, because I would get no responses sometimes for like weeks, but then I'd just re-op it and they'd just be busy and they'd actually be super helpful. So yeah, it's not personal. Just, yeah, be casual about it. So be salty.
Completely agree. Well, we're going to start to wrap up today's event. I just want to say a huge thank you to all three of our expert panelists, Christine Ho, Jake Silverman, and Gabby Gondor. I just want to encourage all of you to utilize all of the things that you've heard today to help enhance your networking skills and, of course, your workflow. We'll be posting this video on our event page on the POPVOX Foundation website at popvox.org in the coming weeks. We'd love to hear any feedback, so feel free to email us at info@popvox.org. Always happy to help folks navigate the Hill. So thank you again, and everybody have a wonderful weekend. So thanks, everybody.